Hello and welcome back to the Comeback Conversations, the podcast for mums over 40 who are ready to stop fading into the background, stop putting themselves last, and start rebuilding their confidence, their health, and their identity. I'm Henry, and today I want to talk about something that honestly sits underneath everything. Not just fat loss, not just fitness, not just routines, habits, and motivation. I want to talk about the mind. I want to talk about visualization. I want to talk about self talk. I want to talk about the fact that your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become the product of your future. Because whether you realize it or not, the way you speak to yourself every single day is shaping the woman you become. And I think for a lot of women, especially mums over 40, especially women whose lives have revolved around everybody else for years, this is the bit that gets missed. You'll hear about calories, you'll hear about steps, you'll hear about protein, and you'll hear all about workouts. And yes, of course, these things matter. But if your internal voice is there constantly saying, I've left it too late, what's the point now? I always fail. I'm just not disciplined. I'm not that kind of woman. I can't change. My best years are behind me. Then, even when you try to move forward, part of you is still pulling the handbrake on. So today, I want this episode to feel a bit like a reset, a bit of a wake up call, a bit of a reminder, and hopefully for some of you, the start of a shift. Because everything does begin in the mind. Let's start here. So many women think their struggle is mainly about food, or consistency, or time, or menopause, or motivation. And yes, those things can absolutely be part of the picture. But often underneath all that, there is a much deeper layer. And that deeper layer sounds like this: I don't trust myself. I don't believe I can do this. I've tried too many times. I don't feel worth the effort, or I don't even know who I am anymore. That's the layer people don't always say out loud, but it's there. And it matters because the brain is always listening to what you repeatedly tell it. If every day you rehearse failure, fear, embarrassment, and hopelessness in your own mind, then that becomes your normal. You start acting in line with the story that you keep repeating. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because your identity will always pull your behavior back towards what feels familiar. And that's why someone can say they want confidence, want energy, want to lose weight, and want to feel better in their clothes, want to walk in a room and feel good again. But then they still sabotage themselves because part of them still identifies as the woman who never sticks to anything, the woman who always puts herself last, the woman who's far too gone, the woman who used to have it all together but doesn't anymore. And if that's the story, then every action starts from a place of defeat. So before we talk about plans and methods and routines, we've got to talk about that voice in your own head. Because that voice is either building your future or quietly destroying it. And I want to make this personal for a minute because I don't want this episode to sound like I'm speaking to you off some perfect place. There was a time in my own life where my mind wasn't working for me, it was working against me. And from the outside, you might still function, you still get on with things, you still show up, you still look fine to other people, but internally, you're doubting yourself, second guessing yourself, dragging yourself down, telling yourself you're behind, telling yourself you're not enough, and telling yourself other people have got something that you haven't. And when you live there for too long, it becomes exhausting. You start shrinking, you start hesitating, you stop backing yourself, you stop moving with conviction. And what changed for me wasn't just working harder, it was becoming aware of how I was thinking. It was realizing that I could not keep speaking failure over my own life and then expect confidence, progress, and growth to appear. I had to change the conversation in my head. I had to start catching the automatic negativity. I had to start choosing better thoughts. I had to start visualizing where I was going instead of obsessing over where I was. And that doesn't mean pretending life is easy because I know it's not. It doesn't mean fake positivity. It doesn't mean denying hard days. It means understanding that your mind needs leadership. Because if you don't lead it, it will drift. And when it drifts, it usually drifts towards fear, doubt, comfort, and self protection. So This isn't airy fairy. This isn't fluff. This is foundational. Now, I really want to bring this into the niche because I know so many women listening to this are in a very particular stage of life. Maybe your kids have flown the nest. Maybe they're older now and need you less. Maybe your role in the family has shifted. Maybe your relationship with yourself feels unfamiliar. Maybe you spent years being needed by everybody else and now you're left with silence. And that silence, and in that silence, sometimes the truth comes up. The truth that you've neglected yourself. The truth that your confidence has dropped. The truth that your body doesn't feel like yours anymore. The truth that you've hidden behind being busy for years. The truth that you don't know that what this next chapter is supposed to look like. And that can be painful. Because when your children are younger, life is chaos, but there's constant purpose. When things quiet down a bit, it can suddenly feel like, right, now what? Who am I without constantly being needed? What do I actually want? What happened to me? And sadly, that's where a lot of women turn against themselves. They don't meet themselves with compassion, they meet themselves with criticism. They look in a mirror and don't see possibility, they see disappointment. They don't say, this is my time to rebuild, restart, reset. They say, I've let myself go. I'm too old. It's too late now. And I should have sorted this years ago. And I want to say this very clearly. You do not build a better future by bullying yourself into it. You don't heal through shame. You don't rebuild identity through self-hatred. You don't create discipline through constant internal punishment. That voice might feel normal because you've had years of it, but normal doesn't mean helpful. And familiar doesn't mean true. You are not done. You're not past it. You're not too old. You're not stuck being the version of yourself. You're not stuck being this version of yourself forever. But the shift starts when you stop agreeing with every negative thought that passes through your mind. Let's break down that line because I think it's so powerful. Your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become the product of your future. So let's work through it. The thoughts become words. If your thought is, I'll never change, then your words become, what's the point? I'm useless at this. I'll start Monday. I'm just being realistic. I'm not like other people. And your words matter because words reinforce identity. The more you say something, the more you start believing it. Words become actions. If your words are defeatist, your actions become hesitant. You don't fully commit. You skip the walk. You overeat and tell yourself, well, I've blown it now. You miss one day and disappear for 2 weeks. You avoid the gym because you already feel embarrassed. You stay stuck because your language has already told your body this isn't happening. Actions become future. And then after weeks, months, maybe years of those small repeated actions, you look around and say, see, I knew I could do it. But that wasn't proof that the change was impossible. That was the proof that the original thought was left unchallenged. And this works both ways, because if the thought becomes, I'm capable of changing, I can rebuild, I can keep promises to myself, I don't need to be perfect, I need to be consistent, I can become stronger from here, then the words change. And then when the words change, the action starts changing. And then when the actions change, the future starts changing. That is why mindset is not separate from results. It's part of the machinery that actually creates them. One thing I really want to touch on this is sort of the danger of rehearsing the wrong future. Most people are already visualizing, they're just visualizing the wrong thing. They picture themselves failing. They picture themselves looking stupid. They picture themselves quitting. They picture themselves staying stuck. They picture another year going by with nothing changing. So when people hear visualization, they sometimes think it means sitting there, imagining a perfect life with candles and hoping that the universe sorts it out. That's not what I mean. What I mean is this. What you're mentally rehearsing every day, because your brain pays attention to repetition. If every day you mentally rehearse, I can't, I fail, I always mess it up, I'm too tired, I'm too old, I'm too far gone, then don't be surprised if your actions line up with that. You've practiced that version of yourself more than any other. But What if instead you started mentally rehearsing a different woman? The woman that goes for a walk even when she can't be bothered. The woman who lifts her posture when she enters a room. The woman who eats one nourishing meal and says that counts. The woman who stops waiting to feel motivated and just begins. The woman who backs herself. The woman who keeps going. The woman who is becoming stronger, calmer, healthier, happier. That matters because the mind often moves in the direction of images you keep feeding it. So ask yourself honestly, when I think about my future, what do I see? More of the same or a comeback? Let's make this practical. Visualization doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be 2 minutes in the morning before the day gets going. It can be standing in the kitchen with a coffee and asking yourself, how does the woman I want to become carry herself today? Now, in 10 years, sorry, not in 10 years, not when the scales say a certain number, not when life is perfect. Today. How does she speak? How does she move? How does she respond when she has a wobble? How does she treat herself? What does she do when she's tired? What does she do when she's emotional? What does she do when the old habits call her back? Because when you can picture her more clearly, you can begin acting in alignment with her. And that's where things change. So for the woman listening, I want you to visualize this. You wake up and you don't instantly criticize your body. You put on your trainers and go for a walk because you said you would and you left them out the night before. You choose a breakfast that supports your energy instead of punishing yourself all day and then overeating at night. You look at your reflection and instead of saying, I hate what I see, you say, I'm working on her. I'm not giving up. You stop speaking like life is over. You stop dressing like you want to disappear. You stop waiting for permission to matter. That's visualization, not fantasy, direction. It's giving your brain a clear target, a clearer target than fear. Now, let's get into self-talk a bit more deeply because this is where a lot of people get trapped. Some women have spoken to themselves harshly for so long that they don't even realize how brutal it is. They just think it's honesty. But honesty and cruelty are not the same thing. There's a difference in between. And there's a difference between I've been out of routine and I need to take responsibility, and I'm pathetic, I've ruined myself, I've got no willpower. One creates action, the other creates shame. And shame rarely creates lasting change. So let me give you some common examples of self-talk I hear all the time. I'm disgusting, I've got no discipline, I always mess things up, I'm too old to change, I'm too far gone, I used to be slim, but that ship has sailed, I can't trust myself around food, I never finish anything, I'll probably fail anyway. Now, imagine hearing those sentences from somebody you love, your daughter, your friend, your sister. You wouldn't let them speak about themselves like that. So why is it acceptable when it comes from your own mind? This is where I think many women need to draw a line. Not because every thought will suddenly become positive. It's not going to be that way. It won't. But because every thought deserves your agreement. A thought can appear without being truth. Read that again in your own mind. A thought can appear without being true. Just because your brain says yes, you can't do this, doesn't mean you can't do this. It just means that that's thought showed up. Your job is not to obey every thought. Your job is to challenge the ones that are keeping you small. So how do we actually shift this? Here's the first thing. Catch it. You cannot change a pattern you don't notice. So start paying attention. What to do? What do you say to yourself when you look in the mirror? You get dressed. You overeat. You miss a workout. You feel uncomfortable in your body. You compare yourself to someone else. What's the automatic script? Because there usually is one. Then, number two, challenge it. Once you hear it, ask, is this actually true? Is this helpful? Would I say this to someone I love? Is this moving me forward or keeping me trapped? For example, I always fail. Do you always fail? Or have you struggled with consistency at times? Those are not the same thing. I'm too old. Are you too old? Or are you scared of trying again? Again, not the same thing. And then three, replace it. Now this is important. Replacing negative self-talk does not mean jumping to something you don't believe. If you currently feel awful, saying, I am the most confident woman in the world, it's probably not going to land. So instead, use believable ground replacements. I'm learning to trust myself again. I can start from where I'm at, from where I am. One bad day does not define me. I don't need perfect, I need consistent. I'm capable of change. I can do hard things. I am becoming the woman I've neglected for too long. My past does not get to decide my future. That sort of self talk is powerful because it creates movement. Then repeat it. Number four, repetition matters. The negative voice got strong because it's been repeated. The new voice gets strong in the same way, again and again, day after day, choice after choice. Not because it feels magical, but because it builds identity. This to me is the real work. It's not just how do I lose a bit of weight, it's who I'm becoming. Because if you still see yourself as the woman who is stuck, invisible, exhausted, and not worth the effort, then you will struggle to maintain any change. But if you begin seeing yourself as a woman who follows through, a woman who takes care of herself, a woman who's allowed to have goals, a woman who can become strong at any age, a woman whose story is not finished, a woman who is stepping into her next chapter rather than mourning her old one, then your choices begin to line up with that identity. And I think this is especially powerful for mums whose kids are grown up. Because for years, your identity may have been the one who does everything for everyone. And now there is an opportunity, not always an easy one, but a real one to become more than that, to reconnect with the version of you that got buried, to become the woman who doesn't just survive this next phase of life, but owns it. Not by becoming someone fake, not by pretending there's no pain, not by ignoring how hard certain seasons have been, but by deciding that pain is not the end of the story. I also want to say this because I never want these episodes to sound like growth is only valid when it looks clean and polished. A mindset shift is not proven on your best day, it's proven on your hard day. It's proven when you feel flat, you're emotional, you have rubbish sleep, you've overeaten, you've missed your walk, you feel bloated, you're comparing yourself, you want to sack the whole thing off. That is the moment. That is when the old voice comes in and it hits hardest. The old voice says, see, here we go again. You're hopeless. You've blown it. You may as well give up. But the new voice says, no, I'm not spiraling at the moment. No, I'm not turning one choice into a week. No, I'm still the woman who is changing. No, I start again now. That is power, not perfection, power. And that's what I want more women to understand. Confidence is not always loud. Sometimes confidence is simply refusing to abandon yourself again. Let's go a little bit deeper emotionally, because I know some women listening to this aren't just struggling with motivation. They're grieving. Grieving youth, grieving old versions of themselves, grieving marriages, grieving the years they lost to stress, survival, people pleasing, low self-worth, or simply putting everyone else first. And when you're carrying that, it can be very hard to believe in a better future, because pain has a way of making tomorrow look like more of the same. So if that is you, I want you to hear this. You are not weak for finding this hard. You are not dramatic for feeling emotional about it. You are not shallow for wanting to feel good in yourself again. You are not selfish for wanting more than just existing for other people. You are human. And wanting your spark back is not vanity. Wanting to feel attractive again is not shallow. Wanting energy, confidence, strength, joy, and purpose is not too much. It is allowed. You are allowed to want your life back. You are allowed to reinvent yourself. You are allowed to become the woman you needed years ago. And yes, it starts physically sometimes with walks, workouts, food choices, routines. But underneath that, the deeper shift is this. You start treating yourself like someone whose future matters. That's where the change begins. So let me leave you with some very practical things you can actually do this week. Tool 1, the morning question. Every morning, ask yourself, how does the woman I want to become show up today? Not forever, today. Tool 2, catch one negative script. Pick one recurring negative thought and challenge it every time it appears. For example, I always fail. Replace it with, I'm learning consistency and I keep going. Tool 3, 2 minute visualization. Spend 2 minutes picturing yourself moving through your day well. Not perfectly, well. See yourself going for the walk, preparing the meal, drinking the water, speaking kindly to yourself, holding your posture, turning one good choice into another. Tool 4, the identity statement. Choose one sentence to repeat this week. Something like, I am becoming a woman who backs herself, or I do not abandon myself anymore, or my next chapter can be stronger than my last. Say it when you wake up, say it when you wobble, say it when the old thoughts kick off. Tool 5, stop waiting to feel ready. This one matters. You do not need to feel fully confident to start acting like someone who is changing. Action often creates belief, not the other way around. So don't wait until you feel like it. Move first. Let the evidence build. And before I wrap this up, I just want to speak directly to the woman listening who maybe feel a bit emotional hearing all this. Maybe you've spent years being stronger for everyone else. Maybe you've lost your confidence. Maybe you don't recognize yourself. Maybe you keep saying that you'll start and then you talk yourself out of it. Maybe you're exhausted by your own negative inner voice. Maybe part of you wants more, but another part is scared to hope again. I get it, but please hear me. You do not need to have all the answers right now. You do not need to become a different person overnight. You do not need a dramatic transformation by next week. You just need a shift, a decision, a moment where you stop saying, this is just who I am now, and start saying, no, this is where I begin again. Because the comeback rarely starts with confidence. It starts with a choice. A small one, a quiet one, a private one. A choice to stop speaking over yourself like you're already defeated. The choice to stop rehearsing failure. The choice to see a future worth moving towards. The choice to become active in your own life again. That is where it starts. In the mind, in the words, in the identity, in the repeated daily actions, and over time, those actions build a new future. So, if this episode has hit home for you, and you know deep down that it's time for a shift, not just physically, but mentally too, then I want to invite you into that shift properly. I've got my summer Shape Up program coming up, and it's for women who are ready to stop drifting and start moving with intention again. Women who want structure, support, accountability, a plan, and a coach in their corner. And if you're not ready to jump fully in yet, or at least you want to test the waters first, then you can also try my free Kickstart week, which is a part of that program. This is such a good place to begin if you need momentum, if you need a reset, and if you need proof that you can still do this. Because sometimes all you need is 1 week of doing things doing things differently to remind yourself, I'm not finished, I've still got this in me. So if that sounds like what you need, come and join us. Start the shift, back yourself, give yourself the chance, because the woman you want to become is not built by accident. She is built through thought, word, action, and repetition, and it all starts in the mind. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Comeback Conversations. If this resonated with you, share it with another woman who might need to hear it. And always remember, you are not too old, you are not too late, and you are not yet done. Your next chapter is still yours to write, and I'll see you in the next one.